Yeah, I work on the phone giving tech support, and sometimes when you answer the phone they'll ask for a man because men are better with computers. Even though I am better at my job than 60% of male employees.
I think everyone should have the same potential. It's whether or not you choose to take that potential and use, you know, what you're given.
I believe that men and women should have equal rights because an individual does not choose which gender they're born into, and there should be no discrimination because of what gender they are or what biological sex they are.
Yes, except women are of course better cooks.
You know, it's how well you take the opportunities that you're given. And everyone should be given the same opportunities. Other than that, men are from Mars and women are from Venus.
Unjust statements from both men and women flood the media, showing women dressed up in the highest fashions, doing everyday things. Men dressed very gallantly, doing unreal endeavors. But what people pass off as fashion these days could be mistaken for looking trashy or degrading. Others find it as a source of pleasure. Porn is produced to tempt the senses. People buy into it. Although according to Forbes, fans of the porn like to state that the industry itself brings in about $14 billion annually. But in actuality, it's more around only $4 billion. Seeing women and men in these films distort the natural act of sexuality and make it seem something that it's not.
Not a fan.
Yes, I believe that sexism is on the rise, probably because the media has more of a role in raising our children than it ever did before. The kind of toys that they're exposed to, the role models, the characters that they're being shown in the media.
Well, sexism, I think everyone should just be equal and get along. I think that there can be jokes that said with a joking mindset are fine and that people take things far too seriously, but I believe in equality between men and women.
Separating men and women for the wrong reasons is always unethical, especially when one narrowed opinion is told to the public as fact. It seems Rush Limbaugh is very apologetic for sexist statements he makes. Who you are and what you stand for matters when people are sensitive to certain issues. If anyone were to get upset with someone else for posting their strong opinions, it's notably okay. It's how you handle the anger that will seem to get out of hand at times. But that surely doesn't mean anyone should have less rights than anyone else because of their gender and/or sexual preferences.
Well, men evolved differently. They have stronger upper body strength than women do. It's just natural. Women can build up their upper body strength, but men naturally have.
With manual labor, women aren't supposed to pick up heavy things.
Women are often given less physical tasks to work. I feel like a lot of women have work in business settings, whereas men are more common seen. Not more common seen, but you don't really see a bunch of women at construction sites or like aerospace engineering.
I mean, men are just built like genetically to be able to like lift more and haul more and be able to do certain things that involve just physical body strength. I think women have that kind of strength in other areas that men are lacking, but when it comes to manual labor, men are just genetically built for it.
We don't have as like much body mass to move around, generally.
For the most part, I think men are naturally built to be able to lift more.
Saying the term manual labor will more likely trigger an image of a man working hard on the job than a woman. The media is flooded with the golden smile of hard-at-work men, more so than women, making a difference in society, which is a great thing, although there is certainly a more fixed angle on men in the workforces than women in the media.
Alright, well, the growing presence in gender roles, for example, if you go shopping at any store and you go down the boys' aisle, you will see the blue toys, and the girls' aisle, you'll see the pink toys. Whenever there are gender roles, there's sexism, and it's damaging to everybody.
Because people think that girls can't do anything and boys can do everything, and then there are some fields where it's like, oh, that's a girl thing or not a boy thing.
I don't know if it's a growing problem. I feel like it's always been there, and I feel like it's kind of staying the same. I feel like it's more equal now than it used to be, because a lot of women are intermingling with the male jobs.
No, I think it's a receding problem, since now we have women's suffrage and other women's rights.
Although sexism is a very bothersome state of affairs across the world, it seems that in the dirt and the grime of politicians and media, some sugar is being leaked. In Egypt, the outlookers and lawmakers have caught the public's voice. They are trying to better set the rules to accommodate the female population by bringing back the attention to their rights that belong to them. It reads in the article from December 2011, after the Minister of Local Development said that he would consider appointing women to head some of Egypt's 26 governorates for the first time in Egyptian history. The government announced that women could not hold these positions because the lack of security made it too dangerous for them to go into the streets to monitor citizens' problems.
Duh. Oh my god.
Alright, portrayal of female characters can reflect sexism as well as the male characters. You know, for example, in The Simpsons or any sitcom ever, the man is the bumbling idiot and the woman is the sassy bitch. Like, The King of Queens is a very good example. Everybody Loves Raymond. It's the same archetypes, and that's blatant sexism when you cast and describe a character a certain way to reflect a certain sex in a certain light, and that is sexism in the media.
Definitely. There are a lot of commercials that are geared towards men that have women in really suggestive clothing, and then also ads for women that are directed towards women have men that are shirtless or in the least clothing possible. And they're usually attractive. In the male commercials, the women are attractive, and in the female commercials, the men are attractive. You don't really see women who don't fit the societal molds in the commercials.
From the past, it's been media, especially news media, has been very male dominant. You know, like all the nightly news shows used to be hosted by men, like Walter Cronkite. You know, there was no Katy Couric show back in the day, and now we're just kind of accustomed to that. We're kind of just like used to seeing mostly, if not all, men on the news desks or over news radio, you know. So, I don't know if that's inherently sexist. It's just kind of almost sexism that we're used to.
Guys are seen as men. Gals are seen as women. Just looking at the two sides sounds simple enough, but the differences shown in the media is very, very black and white. The media is obviously directing towards male audiences when they show scantily clad women and outrages over-the-top violence or rude humor. This creates a sense of conformity to the image of independent people, which tells people how exactly to act and what to do on almost a daily basis.
I believe men and women should have equal rights, you know, get paid the same for the same job, but as far as, like, women that don't want the door held open for them, I think that's taking it too far. I think that the next time I get bitched out for holding the door open for someone, I'm just going to start yelling at them too, because I hold it open for everyone, men, women. Like, it doesn't make you weak because I'm holding the door open for you. I think feminism is, like, radical feminism has killed chivalry in men.
The feminist movement, I'm not for or against it. I feel like a lot of women take things too harshly.
There's the feminist movement.
Depends on which part. Like, radical feminists are insane, should shave their legs, and should let me hold the goddamn door for them. Regular feminists, the one who say, yeah, women should have equal rights, I'm all for it.
When a group is put down for so long, they will eventually all rise as one, trying to get back what they rightfully deserve. That's what the feminist movement is set out to do. Standing up for things that need to happen is what people love to do, naturally. Feminists want to have their own say on what laws apply to their body, equalizing in the same state of men, meaning that they want the same opportunities and ability to do just as much as men can.
Everyone likes violence.
No, I am not a violent person. I'm a huge pacifist, and being touched by anyone, like hitting or whatever, is huge turn off for me.
Bam, pow, scratch, fight, inflict. Violence is everywhere. It's on TV, in the movies, in history, in music, in the streets, in national relations, books, families, friends, enemies, cartoons, just about anywhere you can name. Violence speaks to our senses. It ignites a reaction with the viewers, just as well as the participators. Physical embraces and dangerous combat is one way of causing an unsettling feeling in the audience when shown in the media, which makes the viewer very aware of what's going to be said next.
Yes, it's in probably about 90% of rap music.
And in music, it's definitely prominent.
When it comes to news, I think if it's newsworthy violence, then it should be shown. Like, there shouldn't be any edits for children. Like, if people were beat up at a peaceful protest, that's important news. That should be shown. Violence in other media, I think some of it's unnecessary, but, you know, I'm a scriptwriter, so if the violence enhances the plot and is character-driven, all for it.
The other side of the question is, well, then should we, like, outlaw video games and stuff like that? And so I guess it is a matter of free speech to be able to broadcast that. I feel like we have a surplus of violence in our media.
Rap songs talk about gangs and, you know, gun violence and things like that. I feel like a lot of the times it's not necessary. They could convey the message a different way, but they resort to talking about violence to get the point across.
Certain culture and attitudes that follow different bands are actually what's dangerous. Because music itself, there's nothing wrong with the music. I think it could be the culture of one band or a group of bands that is more violent than the songs themselves.
News stories that have violence in them, it's kind of showing the people that are watching it what's really going on.
I don't know, but the news scares the shit out of me. Depends, like, on the news, obviously, because stuff like that sells.
Violence is nothing new, never was, although artists are always seeking out innovative ways to show violence, whether it be in films, video games, cartoons, videos, or even on a stage. Violence is a very relevant issue. Primal urges and a sense of accomplishment goes hand in hand with violence. Most know it's wrong to bring violence to someone, but still, it sells. Countless movies contain acts of violence, putting it in a positive light. Violence is on the news. Reporters release information of stabbings, shooting, rioting, and so much more every day. Books are released that contain violence that are very powerful works and become popular enough that teachers believe that they should be taught to children.
I believe that the more guns are in circulation, the more dangerous the society will be. Countries like Taiwan or whatever, it's illegal to own guns. Guess what? They don't have school shootings.
No, that would probably increase violence. I mean, because then it becomes this thing where it's like, hey, I got a gun, I can hide it, and these people are so dumb that they don't notice, you know.
No, nothing's going to decrease violence. It's kind of written in our DNA. We've always been violent. We'll just find different ways to be violent.
No, because guns are already existent. The only way to decrease violence is to add more guns. Because someone's going to have a gun no matter what. You just want to make sure the right people have guns.
There's always the argument that only the bad people will have guns then and none of the good people will have guns. Well, you see, if we catch a bad guy with guns, you know, somebody, then not only do we give them the charge of doing whatever they did to get caught, but you also give them the charge of having a gun on them so they could go to jail for a longer time. So I feel like we just shouldn't have guns. We should leave that up to the police. And if we have black market guns, then we just gotta crack down on that, you know?
Yes.
According to an article by C.J. Kiramella, gun crimes are decreasing, although the sales of guns are increasing. Differentiating opinions still run rampant, simulating that more guns, more violence. When some say less guns, more violence, it's all in how you look at it. The right to bear guns has been a conflict for years. Whether you wish to own a gun or not is usually decided upon by personal experiences with changes through your terminal screen.
I see why not.
No, I do not believe that people should have the right to own guns. It's very controversial and political, but I do not believe in the right to own guns.
There should be like some laws, like if you own a gun, you should, I don't know, have a mental health check.
I think there should be background checks, but I don't think that right should be taken away from everyone.
Registrations and, you know, you have to get a license and all that to even shoot it.
And they should also have psychoanalysis before they're allowed to own a gun. The violence that you're exposed to in a video game only lasts for 15 minutes, and after that it no longer affects you anymore.
They have different rating systems to regulate what age group is viewing the violence, but parents kind of typically give the violent video games to children anyway.
I kind of see that video games, like once you're really into a game, obviously you're not going to want to put it down, and then that kind of affects people in a way because they see the violence on the screen and they're in a way committing the violence, and it lets them, and that like affects their mood and the way they talk and everything during and after.
I approve of the rating system that we have in place.
If your child is weak-willed enough to become violent because he plays Grand Theft Auto, then you have just done a bad job as a parent.
Yeah, despite what politicians like to believe, violent video games do not increase violent habits. If anything, they just increase your dexterity with your hands and reaction time.
I've played violent video games, my brothers have played violent video games, and none of us have ever gotten in fights in our entire life. Never a fist fight. So I do not believe that video games make people violent.
Almost 5 decades of the same dispute. Whether or not violent video games cause violent behavior in adults and children. Over the years there have been much testing and experimentation surrounding this subject. We have found that some instances of violence have, indeed, been influenced by video games, but only for a temporary time span. Most violent-themed video games give the player rewards for the more violent they can be, which is understandable that this may be the cause for more violent behavior. Still, people say that it's all fun and games, it's all in how a person interprets it.
No, I'm not racist.
There are a vast amount of ethnicities throughout humankind, and by nature, humans observe other people and make their own assumptions and place an attached description to the image. It's unfair to consider a person because of race. Having distinct physical characteristics that differ from others doesn't make that person any less of a human.
I think if you're doing it to make a point, anything newsworthy should be shown. So if someone was beaten up and killed because they were a different race from the people that killed them, that's newsworthy. You know, no matter what race was killed, that's something that's newsworthy. So if you're showing something like that, fine. If you're Geraldo Rivera, who's trying to make a point about how, you know, they shouldn't wear hoodies, no, that shouldn't belong on television at all.
An article by Shelley Ettinger states that another article from the New York Times tells about an 11-year-old girl in East Texas who was brutally raped by 18 young men, which Shelley thought was just awful, but what really got to her was that the article attempted to justify the rape by exclaiming the young girl was dressed in slutty clothes and was asking for it, therefore deserves to be destroyed. Shelley wrote that the overall story was decisively sexist in terms of the characterization of the child and making her out as less than a victim. She did more research to find that the majority of the rapists were African Americans and the victim was Latina. The article announces that there have been a roundup of youths, all African American, some of which may not have had to do with the crime, other than that they are innocent bystanders in a poor neighborhood, which Shelley thinks is an act of racism from the police for not obtaining full reason to send these men away.
Birth of a Nation, things that are inherently white supremacist are bad and should not be read by children. However, I think things like Huckleberry Finn, that has now been censored for the N-word, thus taking away a lot of its dramatic integrity, should be read by kids. It's a reflection of the time. And, you know, Huck learns to not be racist in the book. Like, he learns to appreciate Jim as a human, not as some person of color. You know, if you take away the language Huck is using, you take away a lot of the point of the book.
Yes, because the racism, the racial slurs are just a reflection of the time period, not actual, like, racist slurs.
Okay, historically accurate racist books I think should be allowed, like Tom Sawyer, Huckleberry Finn. I do approve of that literature. However, I do not agree with teaching hateful things. You know, I don't think we should ban books. On the other hand, I don't want children being taught extremely hateful, cruel, violent things. Like, if it's a book and, like, the entire thesis of the book is making the reader become racist, then no, I probably wouldn't want, you know, I probably wouldn't want children exposed to that.
Along with media, censorship is everywhere. It's sometimes hard to tell if something's been censored, or if the artist made it that way. But a good example goes back to Mark Twain. He wrote The Adventures of Tom Sawyer. It contained language that most would find offensive. Parents of children may not want to have language like that taught to them, but the morals that the book has to teach is prime for any aspiring student. Other books that include dialogue unfit for children may not have the best moral compass to have the justification of being taught. Other writings can seem biased, which may offend cultures.
Socially, no. Physically, yes. I've never received any negative connotations for being white. You know, I've never been discriminated against for being white. I sunburn easy. That just happens with low melanin.
My race affects me, like, I don't care about it, I don't do anything about it, but I do experience white privilege.
I'm a white girl. It doesn't really affect me because I'm not a minority. Except for red hair, I have no soul apparently, but that's about it.
Yeah, well, quite obviously, since I'm a white male, I'm the best of the best.
In 1974, Gary Tyler, 16 years old, was aboard a bus on his way home when a group of 100 to 200 Caucasian boys, mostly students, came and began throwing bottles, rocks, and miscellaneous objects in racial hate of the African American students. During the mayhem, a gun was fired and a 13-year-old Caucasian boy was shot and later killed. Police searched the bus and no gun was found. According to Gary Tyler's mother and other witnesses, Gary was beaten and intimidated by the police to force him confess. Gary was tried as an adult and obtained an incompetent lawyer. Gary was sentenced to death, but later in 1977, Louison's death penalty was dropped, lucky for Gary. But he was then sentenced to life in prison.
I believe that racism is a growing problem because the increase in media in young people's lives, because of increased access to the internet, to cell phones, to music, it's easier for racism to be marketed to young people, and because of that, it's a growing problem.
It is.
I think it's been around for a while, so it's not exactly growing, but it's still present.
It's not just like black and white, it's black, white, it's tan, it's red, it's yellow, it's brown.
Everyone is born into this world with free will, but it was not their choice to be here or who they are. Classifying ourselves is a natural thing to do, but when it stunts the growth of our living habits in society, we may have to think twice and take our time to realize the respect that people deserve when it comes to their sex, ethnicity, and their emotional urge to argue.
Inherently, no.
No?
Whips? No.
Indiana Jones uses a whip. Let's see why it's racist. Mexicans use whips. I don't think it's racist. Usually in conversations with stupid people, because they don't know what they're talking about.
Little towns in the middle of nowhere, just from my experience, tend to be racist.
I have experienced racism. When I was younger, I went to a summer school with inner city kids, and they would call me names, and they expected me to behave certain ways because I was white. And so yes, I have experienced racism.
I went to a small high school in the middle of Missouri, so yeah, there are racist kids in my school, but there was such an abundance of white people that it was never a problem.
I mean, and he was very intelligent and everything, and I think he went to like an Ivy League school, but my aunt was adamant and said, you know, no effing black guy is going to touch my money and stuff like that. And so we were just kind of shocked that she said that, because we had no idea that she felt this way about anyone of race, of any kind.
Racism is a sensitive subject and should be settled with care and warrant ethical causes. Everyone is born into this world with free will, but it was not their choice to be here or who they are. Classifying ourselves is a natural thing to do, but when it stunts the growth of our living habits in society, we may have to think twice and take our time to realize the respect that people deserve when it comes to their sex, ethnicity, and their emotional urge to argue.